Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the latest Entitled to webinar. Just before we get going properly, could I just do the quick sound hands up check, if that's okay with everybody? In your panel on the right hand side, you should have a little hands up symbol, and I can see a couple popping up there. Great, oh wonderful, lovely. I'm happy that we can be heard. So you have three presenters on your webinar this morning. We have Phil Ogolnik from Entitled to, Matt from Pellcomp, and I am Wendy, also from Entitled to. Thank you for that lovely wave, Matt. Hopefully you are here to hear about the Better Off calculator and how it can be integrated into your case management system. So you're going to hear from both Phil and Matt to talk you through how Entitled to's Better Off calculator can be integrated with the Pellcomp PICS system, and ultimately with the goal of helping you support your clients get back into work, and using the Entitled to Better Off calculator to look at the financial benefits of getting people back into work through the Restart programme. So hopefully that's what you're here to hear about today. If you can just move me on to the next slide, please, Phil. This is what we're going to look at. So we're going to look at just a little bit of a background about who are Entitled to and who are Pellcomp. Just to give you a little bit of an intro to Matt, he is a Director of Employability Services at Pellcomp, and Pellcomp have been running for around 30 years with over 400 clients who are training providers with managing learning and guidance programs, including the PICS that we're going to hear about today, the Providers Integrated Client System. Lots of acronyms we're going to hear about today, I think. And it's all the Pellcomp are all about helping people improve their work situation, either by getting into work or advancing in work through further learning. And we're Entitled to is the main benefits calculator in the UK. We have many products, but today we are going to be focusing on our Better Off calculator, which is aimed at advisors helping clients into work. So again, they're very complementary pieces of software, which is why we are both here today to talk to you about how the tools can be integrated for you to help your clients get back into work through the Restart programme. Phil's going to look at what the advantages of integration are, and then Matt is going to give us a little demo, and questions are welcome at any point. Please type them in. Again, in your right hand panel you should have a little chat box, or there's a question box. I'll keep an eye on that through the morning, so please type in any questions or comments as we go, and I can ask them either at an appropriate moment, or we'll save them all to the end if that feels better. So I think that's my intro done. We'll now move to Phil to carry on. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Wendy. That's lovely. Yeah, the majority of this session will actually be the demo, which will be mostly Matt driving and showing how the PIC system works. I'll talk through the benefit calculator section of that, but the driving the PIC system will come from Matt. Okay. So these slides are just a quick introduction. Oh, sorry, I've gone on one too far there. So Entitled to, we supply local authorities, housing associations and welfare to work organisations predominantly. We also supply some charities and some people in the debt management sector. Local authorities and housing associations are probably slightly bigger than welfare to work at the moment, but I think that really reflects the fact that the work and health programme, so all pre-pandemic, obviously the work and health programme was a bit smaller than the work programme. Obviously, welfare to work as a sector is growing very rapidly in response to the pandemic, so we expect that as a share of our business, welfare to work will grow and then possibly become bigger than local authorities and housing associations. Do you want to just say any more about Pellcomp? Oh, I should have said, sorry. We do lots and lots of calculations across all those different sectors, 5 million a year, really on the public side.
I could say a little bit. I'll probably repeat some of what Wendy's already covered at the start. But yeah, I mean, Pellcomp have over 450 customers today, which makes up more than a quarter of all submissions to the SFA nationwide. And a lot of training providers are also involved in the welfare to work sector. So PICS has been used to manage employability contracts dating back to Employment Services New Deal, introduced in the late 90s. And today we're gearing up for the Restart programme, which we anticipate to be very similar to the work programme, which PICS has also been used to manage due to obviously the high unemployment that we're experiencing now and the increased competition for job vacancies, which is quite a similar landscape to the work programme.
I might say a bit more of that now, because it's the economic situation is actually a fair bit worse in terms of unemployment levels, but also the composition of that unemployment is different. But in particular, the benefit system is different from our point of view. So I say this quite a lot on URSA webinars. Universal credit may end up in the very long term, when everyone has moved across to it, may end up simpler than the current system. But actually, during the transition between the two, it's certainly more complicated. And also there's a whole bunch of detailed rules associated with universal credit, which are a lot more complicated. I always highlight self-employment and the rules around that. I think we're probably going to have another webinar at the beginning of May on self-employment. So I won't talk about all the difficulties universal credit creates there, but it's certainly the case that universal credit, by definition of it being a new benefit, creates challenges for people. So that's one background, and obviously COVID is the other background. So just in terms of the effect of COVID on the labour market, you probably know this already, that an incredible amount of people have been furloughed, almost 5 million. How many of those will go back, we don't know. The majority will go back, but obviously even if it's only a minority who don't go back, that has potential to massively increase unemployment, and unemployment is already up a fair amount from its pre-pandemic levels. So you will be aware that there is a lot of unemployment coming down the track, hence the government's response through Restart. And I shouldn't forget there's other programs as well as Restart. I always focus on Restart. Obviously JETS is already here. The Restart program is 1.4 million starts, and I believe that we'll know in a couple of weeks who's got that. As I said, we're expecting there to be a self-employment program separately from Restart, and we will probably have a webinar at the beginning of May around self-employment and all the challenges of that area. And yeah, the type of people who are coming on to Restart might be significantly different from the work program, and certainly different from the work and health program, in that a lot of them will be unemployed for over a year purely because of the pandemic. However, within that, there's bound to be a group who don't go back into employment rapidly, and then they become a new group of long-term unemployed who are going to need long-term help and more in-depth help. Okay, so that's the background. I'll just say a little bit about integration and what we're doing. So during the work program, we did integrations with a number of content management systems, one of which was Pellcomp's PIC system, and we did that for Rehab Job Fit as they were then. And we'll show you the simple integration. It basically means that you're holding all the information for that client within the content management system, and it makes it quicker for people to come across to the benefit calculator and hold all their details in one place. We spoke to Matt about 5 or 6 months ago when it became clear that when Restart was first announced, about putting back the previous integration, making sure that was all still working, but also about other things that we could do that would improve the integration. And we came up with this idea of directly linking from the vacancy data that the PIC system holds and that people use to apply for vacancies, to directly run a better off calculation alongside that vacancy data, because we can use the salary data as what would be their earnings in work, and we can supply that directly back into Pellcomp. So just as we think simple integration helps quite a lot in terms of time saving for advisors, we think that this vacancy data integration will offer a further time saving for advisors. And I should also say, it's not just advisors. All our products can be used self-service or advisor-led. Indeed, with local authorities and housing associations, that's predominantly how our calculators are used. They're on their website for people to self-serve. In the case of welfare to work, historically there's been less self-service, and that might be due to the nature of the clients under the work programme, the work and health programme, or it could just be technology catching up. Our expectation is that there'll be a lot more self-service under Restart, and our calculators are box ready for self-service. It's designed with self-service in mind. So they all work perfectly on a phone and on tablets and things like that. Okay, so we're trying to make it quicker for advisors to do a better off calculation and self-service to do a calculation. But the other thing that we realized is that we can provide all this data for your data analytics. So that's the other thing that we want to tell you about, is the ability to take the benefit calculator data and put it into your data analytics, and from that drive out information about what works. So I think my last slide is just a summary of that. So we're going to show you the basic integration, which we've done a lot with lots of different systems. We think it's a quick win because we've done it a lot. It's easy for us. It's pretty easy for almost any content management system. They're passing across a reference ID and we're passing back a PDF with the results from the benefit calculation. But then there's two new things. There's linking directly to the better off calculator from the vacancies that are presented within PICs. And last, there's the ability to take all of the data, including the data on how much people are better off in particular jobs and how much different people are better off, and indeed all the demographic information and benefit information which is in the better off calculator. They can all go into the SQL Server data analytics that are provided through Pellcomp, and then your either in-house analytics team or possibly outsourced analytics team can take all that data and use it for their analysis of what works. I think I've covered the introduction there. Has anyone got any questions before I hand over to Matt? I'm going to take silence as a no, so I will now try and make you the presenter, Matt. So I shall go to change presenter, and I've switched it over to you. You should find, Matt, that you are now ready to present.
Screen. Okay, so hopefully people can see what I put up on the screen now. See if I can hide my control panel. Is that coming through clear enough, Phil? Is the text big
Yep.
enough, or should we zoom in?
I might zoom in a fraction, but basically it's fine. That's lovely.
Okay.
Super, Matt.
Thank you. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the e-employee web application, which the personal advisors would typically use for the operations side of delivering your contracts. You can see here I'm in my workspace. I've got a list of job seekers who have been referred to me or part of my caseload. Obviously, I'm not going to cover, I'm probably only going to cover a tiny fraction of the system, but we need to keep focused on the entitled to integration piece. So if I pick one of my job seekers, Andrew Akel, and have a look at Andrew's action plan, what you'll see here is the typical kind of smart action plan that's used to tailor the employability program to help an individual get back into employment. So we've got various headings here, like say long-term goals, which this job seeker is aspiring towards. We've got some targets that we've agreed to do. For example, getting the CV ready, having a look at the job matching facilities. We've also got a section for specialist courses, which could be, going to a course to get maybe a couple of hours tuition on building CVs or how to find work or interview techniques. I mean, whatever you decide to put into the action plan. And all these headings are designed by the prime contract holder. They decide how they want to deliver the program, and the kind of the CRM, the PICS side of the management integration system is customizable, so it can match the program for each different prime. But if we just scroll down, we've got an assessment section, and in here I'm just going to create a new assessment task, and that will be a benefits calculation. And this is where the integration starts, because our CRM knows the difference between a benefits calculation assessment and maybe a diagnostics assessment. And so when the system sees that we're creating a benefits calculation, we'll display a launch button which can take us through to entitled to's benefits calculation. Phil, did you want to talk through this part, because this is your end of the
Yeah. So I'm going to talk through this bit just to, if no one's seen the Better Off calculator, I'll just talk through this bit. And the important bit actually, Matt, in terms of what you've just said, is on the very bottom left of your screen where it says calculation reference 0629K. So that's come across from the PIC system, and we're using it as the reference ID on our side. So our approach to GDPR is that we want to stay anonymous, and it's the reference ID which then allows you to link it up to the individual. So in the non-integrated versions, at the top of this screen, we have a reference ID that the advisor can manually type in. We're not displaying the reference ID here because we don't need to. It's all happening in the background. But the key difference with integration is two key differences in terms of time saving. The first is that the advisor doesn't have to bring up the Better Off calculation as a separate URL. They just click on a link within PICS and it brings up the calculator for them automatically. But the second thing is it's providing that reference ID for the case. So there's no need to enter a reference ID. It's all automatically being held with the right person. So that's the kind of simple integration that we've done for a long time, just to keep it all tidy. Okay, if you go down and enter your postcode, we'll just go through. Sorry, you don't need to enter postcode. That's come across automatically from the PIC system. So it's not tons of data that comes across. It's, I think it's postcode, possibly age will come across. Let's have a look as we go through. If you just click on all the defaults, Matt, so we're not going to do anything interesting in terms of them having a partner or children, we're just going to do a simple example, they're 41. That has pre-filled. So it's come through from the data already on Matt's system to pre-fill our system. Okay, yeah, again, we'll go with all the defaults. So they're not unemployed. Okay, we'll say that they're currently claiming universal credit. Click on next. And we'll say they haven't got any other income. So you can click on next there. And then if you just put in that their rent is £100, and if you just change it to £100 a week, in this example, lovely. Okay, and then if you click on next, you can go to don't know. So we've got a facility to go to the address and look up the council tax for that address. So that's coming in now. It's a band C at that address, but because the case we've created is a single person, there's a 25% discount, which we put in there automatically. And we have a lookup where we know that in Norwich, the band C rate with a 25% discount will come to 1136.89. So that's just a little bit of making it easier for the customer. Okay, so the results page, your out of work income is universal credit of 194.59, and they're also going to get help with council tax of £21.80. If you go down the page to how we worked it out, I just let people know that that section provides all the information for benefit advisors. If they understand how these things work, all the information that you need to know to see how we've worked out that amount of council tax support or that amount of universal credit is shown there. We're not expecting advisors to use that. We just make it available in case they're after it. Okay, and then obviously at the bottom, you've got things like downloading a PDF and emailing results, but you don't need any of that because it's all integrated with the CRM system. Okay, so the bit that I missed out there was the better off calculator part. So if you just go back one moment, Matt, if it's easy to go to that tab, just go up a little bit. So that's all the how we worked it out, where if we just concentrate on the how much better off would you be in work. So it's defaulted to 30 hours a week in the minimum wage. You can just click on calculate here. So what we're going to be doing from the PIC system is we're going to be taking the wage rate from there. And this is our table showing before and after. So on the left-hand side, you've got their current income, their income when they are out of work. So they're getting £21.80 help with council tax, and they're getting £194.59 of universal credit. And then we're comparing that with their income in work. So they're earning 30 times £8.72 is £261.60 gross. There's a little bit of tax and NI, which is bringing it down to 247.88 net. So that's the earnings that they're going to get extra, but they're going to lose in benefits most of their council tax support, but they are going to keep a little bit. So they get some money off their council tax bill. And equally with universal credit, they're going to keep £38 a week when they're in work. Okay, so particularly for people who are either got very low earnings, they're on the minimum wage, or they've got children, or they rent, the situation that people will have benefits in work as well as out of work is very, very common. And that's the main use of the benefit calculator, is to say, when you go into work, your benefits won't go completely. You'll be keeping this amount, in this case, £41.87 while you're in work, and they'll top up your income. So the overall situation, as shown in the big banner at the top, is that they are £73.36 a week better off in work, i.e. they're getting £248 extra net income, and they're losing £174 of benefit, and the net amount is that. Okay, hopefully that's familiar if you've ever used the better off calculator. Do you want to carry on and do the integration now, Matt?
Thanks, Phil. So behind the scenes, when we completed that entitled to calculation, the entitled to's server gets in contact with the PIC server and updates the task to show that it was completed today, and also attaches a PDF, which is just a nice summary of the calculation that Phil has just talked you through. So why have we decided to integrate this way through the action plan? It's worth mentioning that because this is essentially a CRM, similar to a CRM system, and that's where a lot of the flexibility to configure PICs for your programs comes from. The nice thing about using a task, albeit a slightly specific type of task, so that we know how to integrate, it means that that task can be either scheduled in on an ad hoc basis, like I did as an advisor. I just create a calculation and off we go. You might have, say, the job seeker sat with you at the time, but we could also build these tasks into any of the workflow engines that we use for delivering programs. So, for example, if I just flash up quickly, this is the what we call the status workflow. It's essentially a number of stages that you define that are kind of standard steps through the job seeker's journey for each of your employability programs. You completely make this up and tailor it to your own needs. But at any stage when we move from one status to another status, so let's say we've done an induction and then we put them on fortnightly reviews, at any of these steps we can trigger and schedule another better off benefits calculation to appear in the action plan. We can also schedule them to happen, on a repetitive basis, like once every 3 months. And because this is, a system designed for employability programs, if, excuse me, if the job seeker suddenly finds employment, when we move to the stage to say they're in work, the system can automatically cancel those scheduled calculations that may not be relevant if they found full-time employment and are moving off benefits completely. So I think, that covers the, as it were, the original integration, where PICs can jump to entitled to and do a better benefits calculation and store the PDF as a result. The newer side of the integrations, when it comes to job searching and seeing if a job vacancy that you're thinking of applying for is actually going to, how much better off you're going to be if you apply for that job. So for this part, I'll just switch to eJobMatch, which is a web application that, that typically the job seekers will log into, excuse me, and have access to. And I'm on the vacancy search page. I'm signed in as the same person that we were just looking at, so that the action plan is going to be the same. And if I click on a job search and select one of the job vacancies that come through as a result, it's probably worth mentioning that these job vacancies are coming from a national job feed that gets topped up once or twice a day. So these are all live vacancies that you can apply for by clicking on the link provided. And if we have a look at the details of this job, we'll see that this job is advertising a salary of £17,000 per year. So how much better off would Andrew be if he applied for this job? In order to find out, we've provided a better off calculation button, which will take all the information that we've already got about Andrew, which includes everything we did earlier when we did the initial calculation, because obviously entitled to haven't lost this information. They've still got a record using this unique ID of this person's benefit status and circumstances. And with that link that we've already created earlier and the salary advertised, we can now do a what if calculation, which will basically, and I'll probably ask Phil to cover this next bit, but it tells you a number of pieces of information about how much better off Andrew will be if he actually got this job and started earning £17,000 a year. Does that sound about right, Phil?
Yeah, that made sense. So what you're on here is the So I showed before the table which you see on screen, and this is the PDF that we produce. So we're automatically sending this back into the PIC system so that you don't need to navigate away and look at the benefit calculator. It's just returned automatically. And instead of using, as in the previous version, we were using the work hours times minimum wage. In this one, we're just pulling through that wage of 17,000. So that's that 327 per week gross earnings. We're doing the netting off the tax NNI to get you down to the 292. So that's that second row. And then we're looking at the effect. We're doing what we call a what if calculation, where we take their details and they're identical to before, apart from they've got net earnings of 292, and look at the effect of that on their benefits. It nearly wipes out their help with council tax, so they're just going to get a few pence a week there, and probably not worth, well, they will need to inform the council that they have gone into work, and the council will re-estimate their entitlement. And equally with universal credit, they'll need to tell universal credit that they've started work. Those earnings should automatically come through into the universal credit system, because if they're PAYE, that's the whole purpose of universal credit, to automatically adjust to earnings. We calculate the effect of that will be to reduce their universal credit down to £10 a week. And so the overall effect is their net earnings are 292. They're losing 205 odd pounds in benefit. So overall, they're £86 a week better off. So as their earnings increase, in this case, if the earnings got above probably about 19 or 20,000, then they wouldn't have any entitlement to benefits, and they'd have lost some more. But on earnings below that amount, it's really important to realise they will be keeping some in-work help with benefits. If this example had children, or if they had higher rent, that it obviously extends much higher up the income distribution. So this is a single person and they rent for £100 a week, which is a relatively low rent. They've still got help with benefits when they're in work, which is why you do a better off calculation, so that you can give your participants a clear view of their financial situation in work, which is why it's mandated as part of the Restart ITT. Do you want to just go back to the other screen, because we might be moving on to data analytics? So the PDF is the visual presentation to you or to the client or to the advisor of the better off in work amount. If you just go up a bit, you'll see there's all these bits of data where it says the inputs are the weekly wage of 327, the better off amount of £86.54, the net earnings we calculate of 292.36, and then the difference in the universal credit before 194, after £10.40. Okay. Our expectation is that your advisors will probably still find it easiest to look at the PDF, because the way it's presented in the PDF with the before and after column is easiest. But this data is now available for data analytics, which I think you might be moving on to now, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably just worth kind of confirming that even though this says this is a different application, the job match, and it's designed for job seekers to use, it's connected to the same underlying system as the advisor end of the system. So this information here is stored in a structured format which can be reported on, and it can be combined with all the other information that you've entered into the CRM. For example, if I go down to action plan, you can see we've got the same view of the action plan that I showed you earlier when I was logged in as an advisor. So at the bottom here, we've got 3 benefits calculations, and this is the one we created earlier at the other end of the system. So yeah, in terms of analytics, obviously the system stores a lot of information that comes from PRAP when you get the referrals. It's obviously stored in a very secure location, and we meet all the criteria that DWP expect in terms of security and data availability. But in terms of analytics, what that means is, for example, if we were to produce a spreadsheet using the PIC system, we kind of, when it comes to reporting, we want to make sure that any information you put into the system can be reported out of the system also. So here is really just an example of where we've grabbed some of these what if calculation results. So you can see we've got a lot of numbers here. These are all financial values in terms of what you were just looking at on screen for a number of different job seekers. And we've combined that information with the occupational area of the vacancies that they were interested in. So you can combine that. How you want to combine that, I think it's experimental, isn't it? You need your own report writers that are going to sit and analyze the data that you're putting into the system. But it's just to highlight the fact that you can now bring not only certain demographics like age bands into reporting, combine that with the job vacancies and occupational areas and geographical areas that they're applying for, but also whether the benefits, change in benefits is going to influence whether people apply for jobs or how successful people are when they apply for those jobs. And remember, of course, because PICS is really an end-to-end system, we also store in the PICS system the fact that they've started work or they've lost work, and crucially, when they've achieved enough income to draw down your job outcome payments. And you can bring all that information together to try and analyze what works and what doesn't work. Have you got anything else to add?
I'll just say on the data analytics side, we're not a data analytics company, neither is Pellcomp. So we imagine it's either going to be you internally analysing it, or that you'll have an external data analytics company involved. Our hypothesis is that the better off amount will be important in determining how rapidly people return to work. So to give an example, there will be some groups who have very high returns to work, and I'm particularly thinking of people who are affected by something called the benefits cap. So that particularly affects people living in southeast England where there are high rents, because where there are high rents, you will be much closer to the cap of £500 a week because your rent drives up the amount that you receive. The system under the benefits cap is if that you work 16 hours or more, you're not affected by it. And that means that the returns to work, rather than being the 80 or 90 pounds, which was shown in that last example, which is a fairly typical kind of amount, they can be much, much higher. They can be 100 or 200 pounds a week better off in work, because when they're working more than 16 hours a week, they get full help with housing costs. So our hypothesis would be that when you've got a very high better off calculation amount, you will return to work more quickly. However, that doesn't take account of the reasons why they're affected by the benefit cap to start off with, which are often to do with having lots of children. I'll give you another example, which is there are some people who have quite low better off amounts. I'm particularly thinking of people who are carers and claiming carers allowance. If you claim carers allowance and you earn more than £110 a week, I'm saying 110, it may have gone up to 115 or something. But there's a cut-off point where you lose your help to carers allowance, and that can mean that for carers who are claiming carers allowance, the gap between their in-work income and their out-of-work income is smaller. So our belief would be that those people would be less likely to return to work quickly. However, all these things are just theory. What we need, and I think what DWP need, is the micro evidence from individuals with either very high or very low better off amounts about the speed with which they return to work. Obviously, from DWP's point of view, this really micro level data really helps in terms of designing benefits and designing incentives to get people into work. So we think the ability to take the benefits information before going into work and after going into work, to match that with the other things on Matt's system, like their skill level and the things that Matt automatically supplies in terms of how many jobs they apply for, how quickly they go into work. We think that will give quite powerful insights into what gets people into work most quickly and the importance of different kinds of benefits in affecting that transition. But we can't say any of that for definite, because until you've done the data analytics, you can't know that it's true. Right, I've said my bit there, Matt. Have you said your bit?
I think I have, Phil, yeah. Yeah. Are we ready for questions or?
Have we got any, Wendy?
Just getting my camera back up there. So I think you've just covered one of the questions that came in actually about how configurable the reporting is. So can you give us an idea of how configurable the reporting is? So I think you've pretty much covered that off, but whoever asked that question, if you did want any more information, do let me know, but hopefully it's been covered for you. So we've had another one about how much time is required to set things up for a new client. So might there be development work? How long might things take? And is there training and support available to guide organizations through that process?
That really depends on which system you're looking at there. I mean, if you're looking at PICS, because as a management information system, that is really an end-to-end system, so it's not just used for importing PRAP files and admin and managing initial contacts with the referrals. It goes right the way through to operations and through to the end for claiming benefits and managing your job outcomes steps, so your outcomes, not benefits, and your claims. It's a very configurable system, which takes quite a while to configure at times. It depends how complicated the program is. I mean, historically, now we're getting quite good at it. We've configured PICS for so many different flavors of employability programs. It's kind of bread and butter for us now. But I mean, in an ideal world, we'd like 6 weeks notice. DWP rarely give you 6 weeks from contract announcements to referrals. So obviously we just work with the time that we're given. But even if it's incredibly tight and you've only got a couple of weeks, there's a lot we can do within 2 weeks to actually get you operationally ready for your first referrals. We've never had a customer that couldn't put their first referrals into PICS when the contract goes live. That part of the system is always ready. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, we can start introducing other bespoke or other features that are bespoke to a contract, like the algorithms we use for managing job outcomes. They tend to vary from one contract to the next, but you don't need to claim job outcomes on day one typically. So please try and give us 6 weeks, but we'll do it in significantly less if that's the time that DWP have allowed for you. So that covers the timing. What else? Training. We've got an entire training team, half a dozen individuals who have all worked for Pellcomp for at least several years, some many years, very experienced with both training, delivery and employability, so we can deliver training. If it's an incredibly large contract like Work Program was and Restart is looking like it's going to be, there are different approaches. We can do a train the trainer model where we kind of give your head office staff, or so let's say senior operations staff, some intensive training which they can then pass on to your supply chain. Or obviously nowadays it's incredibly common to do remote training, and we can provide that. And the remote training is a bit cheaper, obviously, because the nature of technology. Any other parts of that question I've missed?
I think that's, I'm skimming the questions. Yeah, I think that's good. Let's just have a look to see if anything else has come in.
I just do our bit on that is, yeah, we take, obviously Pellcomp is a much bigger system, much more complicated system, and it's absolutely central to any Restart provider's operation. What we're doing is we're taking our Better Off calculator, we're rebadging it. As you see, it was badged to PICS in that example. We'd rebadge it to whoever the provider is so that it fits in with their brand. So we normally ask for 2 weeks to do the rebranding, but if you ask us very nicely, we can do it in a week. In terms of training, the basis of the whole calculator is that people can use it self-service. So we don't believe that people need training. We believe that they should be able to just pick it up and use it. And it's designed to be self-service by individuals. So it should just work for advisors on that basis. But we do have, you know, a paper guide, a PDF guide, and we have also got a couple of videos. So if any of you are customers and you would like those, if you just drop me a line and we'll send them to you. If anyone does feel that they need one-to-one training on benefits, we don't provide that in-house, but we do have some out-of-house trainers who we can recommend. But our central belief is we expect people to self-serve on our tools, and we think anyone should be able to pick it up and use it.
Nice segue there into the Better Off calculator, because questions come in about that, that side of things. How long, and you may have covered this throughout, but whilst I was dealing with some of the issues, so maybe we can expand on it if you did. But does the Better Off calculator cover all circumstances, and how long does it take generally to do a calculation, both the initial calculation and then any add-ons that you might want to do? Do you think there's a guide to that?
Okay, so does it cover all circumstances? The short answer to that is yes, in terms of looking at your situation now and when you're in work. It's not going to cover some really complicated things to do with, well, it's not going to cover the initial assessment, for instance, on disability, because that assessment is, ultimately, we can only say, have you been assessed as what Universal Credit would call LCWRA? I have to remember what this means, limited capability for work-related activity. So that's an assessment done by DWP, and we're asking whether people have that LCWRA component, what used to be in the old system ESA support. So we can't do the disability part of the benefit. That's an input because it's an individual assessment. But once we've got that, we can always compare, this is your situation now, this is your situation in work. In terms of length of time, we know that the average length of time on our public website is about 8 minutes to do a calculation, but it really varies a great deal depending on individual circumstances. So I think we use as a guide 10 minutes in general. Does that help?
Cool. Well, hopefully that answers people's questions. Do pop in sub questions if you have any. And they're the questions we've all had in so far. So if anyone else has anything else they would like to ask, please tap that in now. We are 10 to 12, so we have a couple of minutes spare. But if we are done with our questions, we can get you on your way, unless Phil and Matt have anything else they wanted to add. Just before they might, just a bit while chance people have got to give people a chance to type things into the question box, which, just to remind you, is on the right hand side of your screen. There's a question section, and you should just have a chat entry box for you to type in whatever you would like to ask. Just to remind you that I will download this video and the slides and get them over to you hopefully this afternoon, if not be tomorrow morning. But as we are, the benefits year is flipping over this week for some of the benefits. We've got lots of other tools, tasks to get on with on the calculator to keep things nice and up to date for our clients. So I will hope to get this finished today and slides over to you. So if you have any questions as a follow-on from watching this webinar, or from looking back through the slides or the video when they come through to you by email, please get in touch. Phil's email is there for you on the screen that you can hopefully see. It's just phil@entitledto.co.uk, and my details were all on the registration emails from GoToWebinar, or will be on the slides and emails, the video coming out to you this afternoon. So that little segue has not prompted anyone else to ask any more questions. So if Phil and Matt, did you have any further thoughts, or have we?
I should have just said one thing, which is obviously we've shown you our integration with Pellcomp there. We do integrate with other CRM systems. We haven't gone as far as we've gone with PIC, so we've just done the simple integration with other systems. But yeah, it's possible to integrate with anyone, and it's something that we do a lot of, and I think we'll be doing more of it in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. I was just going to say something very much along those lines. Obviously, I doubt anyone's going to want to rip out their MIS system just for the benefits of having an integration with a benefits calculator. That would be the tail wagging the dog. Obviously, whatever system you've got in place, if you want to kind of gain the benefits that we've shown you today of integration, I will say that entitledto are very easy to work with in terms of a software development piece, and I would recommend working with them. And yeah, it's been a pleasure so far, and let's hope we can find, you know, some ways of further increasing the integration piece for the benefit of our end users.
Yeah, completely agree with that. It's been a pleasure working with you as well too.
Perfect ending, I think, and the sun is shining, and in most parts of the UK mean we can be more social, so let's go off and have some lunch in the sun, bump into some neighbours in the street and say hello, and we hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you for coming.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you to Matt. Thank you. It's great having guest speakers on our webinar. It really made the event a great event for everyone, hopefully today, so thank you and goodbye everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.